12.
Yeah, if you need to spread out a bit, maybe it's getting a little cozy there.
I was going to say, could get warm.
If you want to spread that out a little bit, that would be great.
Oh no, we've plastered all reds. So they didn't think about that when they
Nah,
did the seat in charge.
just wait till we move to you. Give me a label so I can remember.
Worked hard to do it.
Oh, this one.
Do it.
I'm feeling.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you again for coming. You're being thanked a lot today. There's a general thanking going on. It might be an idea if you're sort of over there. Might be an idea to sort of move in a little bit so you can hear. Is the level all right? Can everyone hear me? Excellent. Okay. So yeah, thank you very much for coming. Today we're talking about transitioning into a career in technology. It would be great actually to get a show of hands of who actually currently works in technology. So we do, yeah, that's good. So we do have a few people who are currently thinking about it. So I'm hoping that this will help you in this process. And for those people who do work in technology as well, it's always great to hear other people's, stories and learn from the experiences and get advice. Yeah, I'd like to. You're going to be thanked again. No, not just for arriving, but I'd like to really, really thank the people on my panel this evening. Some of them, it's their first time speaking. So, I appreciate that that's a little bit nerve-wracking, but I'm really glad that you've come to Ladies of Code to do that, because this is a really nice environment, I think, to actually try that for the first time. We're always wanting to get speakers, so if you want to share something with the Ladies of Code, then just get in touch with us as well. It is a great forum to try that public speaking for the first time. A really good, it's really good for your personal development if you can do that. And this is, as I say, a great place to do it, which all of these people will attest to.
Something like that, yeah.
Or terrifying, one or the other. Brilliant. So everyone on my panel this evening has done something else before they moved into technology. So did I was a medical researcher. I know, Amy, you also worked in medical research as well, didn't you? So it's quite a common thing. I actually had a boss who, before she was my boss in a technology company, she worked in the circus and was a bricklayer. So she'd had quite an interesting time of it. So, it's quite a common thing, I think. So I'm going to sort of ask each of the panel to sort of introduce themselves to you and sort of say what they do now, and also give a little bit of an insight into what they used to do as well. So Anna, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm Anna. I didn't work in the circus, but I did work as a criminal lawyer, which is arguably not that dissimilar for any of you that have had any exposure, which probably not. But yeah, I worked as a criminal lawyer and had invested kind of 5 years of education and 2 years of on-the-job training to that. And so it's quite gutting to realise that you're a bit unfulfilled by a job that you've committed to at the age of 18, and that the reality of the job doesn't meet your expectations of it. And so around the same time that I was realising that for me a career in law wasn't really sustainable, I'd started taking a coding course through Code First Girls, which I think some of you might be familiar with. They do introductory courses for female graduates and female professionals. I did my course in London, but they do them in Manchester through ThoughtWorks and also through the University of Manchester. And so around the same time that I was thinking that I was looking to transition out of a job, I found something that I really enjoyed, and also a network of people who were going through a similar thing to me, and a wider network of people who were already working in the industry and who represented the kind of prospects, the diversity of prospects that were available to somebody. And so May of last year I quit my job, and I did a coding bootcamp for 3 months, and I graduated in September, and in October I got offered my job at the BBC. So it's quite a quick turnaround, but that's how I got here.
Fantastic. Jeremy?
Well, my name's Jeremy Coates, and my former career, I guess, was spent in the health service. I did a degree and then clinical practice, and I am actually an occupational therapist by original profession, which meant I had to have my name on the government registers and a licence to practice and all that sort of stuff, and had a code of conduct that was 24/7 in terms of, you know, if you got done for more than a parking fine, you could lose your licence to practice kind of scenario. Probably something we could do a little bit more of in tech, to be honest, but we'll climb down off that soapbox for now. And then I guess prior to that, I actually did a BTEC, so at kind of 16 to 18 stage, I did a BTEC in computer studies. So I was always a geek from being a child, you know, engineering type. Used to take toys apart and work at, you know, want to know how they work and things. So that was fairly classical kind of background for me. But then at the end of kind of A-levels, I realised that computing wasn't for me, or I thought it wasn't for me. But if you think of the time, and judged by the grey hair, you'll know how old I am. It's because I'm a granddaddy in this world. You have to realise that. I was being trained to write things like accounting packages in things like C, which was just, you know, boring. Or at least I perceived it as at the time. And then I guess I worked through the health service, worked up through the clinical grades in the health service to the kind of top of the clinical grades that are below the management layers, if you will. And I looked at the management layers in the NHS and realised that there's not a happy person amongst them. And this wasn't a career direction for me that I wanted to go in. And during my health service, I kind of kept my hand in computers for therapy and things like that, so using them creatively in that space, but not programming or anything like that. And then I took the decision, along with my wife, to leave the health service. We both left the health service, and she went into public sector, and I started a company. And coming up 19 years later, I'm still running the company, and I've now got 19 staff. So it started as a lifestyle business, as a contractor, back bedroom, and eventually started taking more people on the thing. So it's kind of a very diverse change. So that'll do as an intro.
Okay, Sarah.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I'm 24. I graduated from a psychology degree about 2.5, 3 years ago. Psychology was a degree that I did because I enjoyed it as a subject. It wasn't something that I thought I would go into a career as. And I ended up doing a psychology degree because since I was young I'd really wanted to be a vet. That was my thing. And but it's about 1 in 20 people get a place in veterinary, so I applied twice, didn't get through, and thought I'm going to have to I can't be applying through UCAS forever, so I went for psychology. It was something I really enjoyed, but as I said, not something I really wanted to do a career in. So during the summer after second year, I was doing some admin work for a tech company. Academy were only around the corner, and the only tech experience I really had was being the go-to in the house for setting up the printer and, you know, dealing with the Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff. And I was chatting with some of the developers and said, you know, I'm really fascinated by what you guys do. It all just looks like magic, and I find it, you know, really interesting. And so the company I work for, we do something called App in a Day, which is we go to schools and run a day course for 15, 16-year-olds who are thinking about doing going down the tech route. And so there was me, 21. I thought I'd give it a go. I thought, well, if 15-year-olds can do it, I can. And I just, in a day, I just fell in love with it. I was fascinated. And you can go, I went from not knowing anything and basically just writing out code snippets and having this app, and I was showing the directors, and people way above my head going, look, if you press play it works. And so they really enjoyed my enthusiasm, and I said, look, I would absolutely love to start here as an intern. And I was so lucky, they took me on and taught me from scratch, and here I am 2.5 years later as a junior developer. So that's me.
Alan?
Hi, yeah, my name's Alan Hilston. So I started out actually doing biochemistry for a little while at university, which I kind of enjoyed the theory of, I suppose, but I was hopeless in the lab, broke a lot of lab equipment. So it came to the end of the first semester and I thought, don't think this is for me. So then I switched to history, loved history. This is about on for 15 years ago now, so I suppose it was in a time when you could financially, you could more make the decision to do something just because you liked it, as you were saying, really, and not that you did yours 15 years ago. And so I did my history degree, and then I wondered what I was going to do after that. Yeah, and then after that I went in to do a bit of TEFL teaching, and did that for a few years. Did some admin jobs, came back to TEFL, taught down the south coast, Bournemouth area, which I enjoyed teaching, and I enjoyed teaching English as a foreign language, but as each year went past, I realised that it was essentially regurgitating the same kind of thing each time, and then I needed a bit of a challenge. I moved back up north, although I was originally from Wales, and had a friend who was just happened to be doing a bit of web design. So I thought, oh, I'll play about with this, and started building sites out of curiosity, really. And then I sort of decided it would, that would become what I would do next. So yeah, after advertising on Gumtree to build sites for people, which I don't recommend. Yeah, I wouldn't go down that route, but it was a bit of a life lesson anyway. I got myself enough of a miniature portfolio together to get my first web development job and worked for an agency up near Bury for a year, and that was okay. Quite a few things I take issue with, but they were a nice bunch of people. And now I've sort of more entered into the software development realm, working at Magma with Jeremy, and that's where I am at the moment. So that's my story so far.
Yeah, there's a few Magma people, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
I've spotted a trend. Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen, another Magma person. Everyone's kind of reeling back to like college. For college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. From leaving high school, went to college, did various A levels that didn't relate to each other, and then kind of finished there, worked part time, and then on to full time when I turned 18. Did various like admin jobs. Worked in a call centre, taking inbound calls, and then I was doing like life insurance and then pensions, and then kind of built up a knowledge of pensions, and then did pension admin for a company just further down the road. And yeah, I got to a point and I was like, this is boring. This is, it's nice, I'm paying out £25,000 to someone and he's got like this massive pension, and I was like, well, why am I sat here, doing this? I want to do something more, more well paid and something more interesting than this. And so I made a decision to go to uni. Did digital media and communications, and it was a bit of front end, a bit of HTML, CSS, and video making and all sorts of different stuff that I don't use today. And then I think it was it December-ish, I kind of got in touch with Jeremy on Twitter, saying, have you got any paid internships or part-time vacancies going, and had a bit of a conversation, a few DMs, a telephone conversation, and it's been 4 years now that I've been at Mcr. I'm now bumped up from a junior to acting mid at the moment. But yeah, I love it. I wouldn't change it. It's been a hard slog. Jeremy will testify to that. But
I
yeah.
warned you. I did warn you.
Yeah. First for like 2 days, you've picked a hard road. He said, very difficult. But yeah, I wouldn't change my mind on this. I wouldn't go back and do something else now.
That's fantastic.
That's me.
So, strangely enough, one of my sort of pre-baked questions, as it were, was around why people have wanted to undertake such a transition, and then the next one was whether or not you feel that you've got out of it what you wanted. But it sounds like you really have.
Yeah. Well, when I was at a full-time job before I went to uni, I moved back home with my parents who live in Manchester. I thought, actually, well, I'm saving a bit of money moving back because my circumstances had changed, and so right, well, I'll see what I can do, because I want to do something different and I kind of want to go into this direction-ish. I want to do something digital, but I didn't have any experience, so I thought, and my A-levels just didn't make sense. From
Yeah,
that
mine
5
don't.
yeah, so then 23 went to uni, graduated in 2013, and it's just kind of never did any like HTML or CSS before. So my units when I did like front end stuff, I was like, God, this is amazing. Like, I'm getting quite high marks. I'm actually all right at it. So yeah, that kind of led me in that direction, where I would never have known before. Really.
Brilliant. Anna, I know you put a lot of time into your previous career. So, what was it that was really driving you towards a career in technology?
I mean, it was a lot of things really, but I think my early exposure to it was, as I said, through this organisation, Code First Girls, and they also kind of offered a way into the tech community. So they had conferences that you could attend as a student of one of their cohorts, and it kind of opened me up to, not only was there the potential for me to do something that I enjoyed, but also to work in an environment that is aware of its shortcomings and is like moving, it's progressing, whereas the same can't really be said for criminal law, unfortunately. So it was an inspiring kind of insight really into that I don't have to feel like this in the workplace. I can actually feel like I can be a catalyst for change and like really make an impact in the work that I'm doing, instead of just feeling like it's a job, you know, and you get up and you go in and it pays the bills. So for me, that was kind of the real driving force.
Jeremy, I can see you nodding.
Yeah, I mean, it's just obviously being the kind of granddaddy on the panel, I'm going to keep coming back to that, I think. I've seen a number of people start their careers in tech around me or you know, in our company and stuff like that. And one of the things that struck me a few years ago as a lead engineer who worked for me at the time, he said, do you know what, the key thing why we're different as engineers, or, you know, because he's a software developer, is that, you know, we get to do fun stuff, we get to add value, and we get paid for it. You know, it's like, where's the bad side of that? You know, and it's actually because we're a bunch of nerds and we're not very good at parties and all the rest. But, you know, that's the kind of by the by. But it's that, you know, a lot of people in the world, and I'm kind of fascinated by statistics and things. The World Health Organization carry a statistic that it's 93% of the average workforce are disengaged. And I would struggle to find 7% of my workforce that are disengaged. It's the absolute inverse. So you find people are in tech. You get people who, you know, leave the chair spinning at 5:30. You know, the jobbers. But what I call careerists, the people who are going somewhere, they want to advance themselves, they want to push themselves forward, test themselves, scare themselves every day. You know, that people who are striving to improve self in a tech environment. You get the permission to do that. You get structures that can do that if you find a good employer. And then actually this, falling back to psychology, Maslow and this hierarchy, you've probably seen it on the internet with Wi-Fi underneath, you know, it's the kind of base need that we all have nowadays. you see that, and people who can reach the pinnacle of a career and self-actualize, they become people who make a difference. They become people who add value to the sum of mankind and stuff. And that's all very kind of, stand for politics kind of stuff. But in reality, it's a fundamental belief set. So one of the things that I've set out to do a few years ago was add value to the community. So Magma run a conference every year, and it's mushroomed into this big thing where we get 400 developers from like 20 countries around Europe and beyond coming into Manchester every year and stuff. And there's a whole community comes off the back of all of that sort of stuff. And it's because I know what I had in the health service was people looking out for my career. There's kind of a active investment in your peers sort of thing. And that's the model that I've tried to bring into the company. And what you're saying about having a network of people around you, I think people who get tech and dive in rather than play on the outside or just leave the chair spinning at 5:30, the people who come out in their own time in an evening, just with a sniff of some pizza and stuff, not that it's bad pizza or anything, but it's that sort of thing where you invest in your own career and you put some time in over and above the day job. Those are for me where the magic happens in tech, where you can make a difference, you can see the impact of what you've done and have a feel-good factor. And you ask man in the street, how many of them say they have that feel-good factor in their job, and it's just a job, it's a way to get to the weekend and all the rest. And it's like most of the people I talk to in tech, not just in my company but around, it's the weekend kind of gets in the way, or it's the time you can go and learn something else, and it's like, actually have a break, guys, switch off, you are allowed, but it's a gene that kicks in, I think, and you suddenly get that switch happening, and it's all absorbing. And I don't know outside of tech many places where you get that real suck you in and you lose track of time. I mean, if anybody who codes, you look up, it's like, oh, where did the time go 4 hours later, and you've like neglected to go and get a brew or whatever, and you're just in the zone and stuff. That's really special, and not many people have that in the world.
I agree, so. And it's a strange mixture of problem solving and creativity and all of that, and actually, yeah, exactly, feeling like you're actually creating something that makes things better for people as well.
Depending on how many books you release and stuff all the rest. But yeah, in general terms, yeah, you can have high days, but and not a lot of people get that opportunity, I don't think.
So we talked about how great it is. Anybody want to pick up or tell me a story about just a big challenge they faced as they were just starting in technology and how they managed to get past it? Everyone's
I'll go for it. So when I first started, it wasn't like I'd done I'd done about a few weeks worth of tutorials and research beforehand, but on the first day I went in and I didn't start projects for a few months or anything like that, but I went in surrounded by people who had done degrees in computer science or computing and were on projects and talking about loads of things, and I was like, oh, I'm never going to be able to understand what that means. And one of the really difficult things was comparing your own progress. So when you very first start, you write something that compiles for the first time and you think, oh my god, and then you've got someone next to you who's just released a project or something like that, and you're continuously comparing your progress to how someone else is. And I think it's really, really important not to do that, and to say to yourself, look, well, could you have done what you've just done now 6 months ago? Probably not. I think that it's really important to give yourself that credit, because when you actually do, you'll figure out, well, actually, really, as you said, time just flies by, and you'll think, oh, in a few months I've learned so much that I didn't even think I could fit inside my brain at one time.
Yeah, I would definitely go along with that, actually, as being the biggest, probably one of the biggest challenges is to overcome that feeling of being amongst people who you consider to be far more knowledgeable and far more experienced, far more educated, or whatever. It's a sort of comparison, imposter syndrome.
Yes.
As a sort of, I think most people probably in the tech industry have kind of come across it, really, and I suppose it occurs everywhere, but it seems to be very poignant.
It's impossible to know it all.
Yeah, I think that's it. But I think because the pace, there's such a pace, and there's such a feeling of, oh, I should. There's lots of kind of shoulds involved, or I should know this and I should know that, and or I'm going to be behind. I think is that kind of that feeling of being left behind somehow. So that, yeah, I think that just adds to it. So, like you say, getting over that and just enjoying what you can do and the progress you're making, and be able to look back and think, well, I know this is where I'm at now, and yeah, that's a continual challenge, I think.
One of the things that really struck me about the definition of imposter syndrome is that it's a fear of being found to be a fraud. And I really, I'd been an intern for about 6 months, and he said, right, we think you're ready to go on a project, not full time, but you'll go on, you'll do 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And I thought, oh my god, what happens if I do it and they go, Sarah, what is that? Like, that's not code. What are you writing? And I thought I was petrified to be on, and I still get that now. I've been on my second project. I'm saying to all my colleagues, oh my god, they're going to find out that I've actually not been writing code at all this whole time. And I even still feel it now. I've nearly been doing it for 3 years, and in a few weeks starting on a new project, and I've done a full project, got it out. It's been relatively successful-ish with my team I'm working with, and I'm still thinking, oh my god, what happens if they find out that I can't write a damn line of code? It's really bizarre.
15 years in and still
Yeah.
that from time to time. I think it's a symptom of pushing yourself, actually. I think it's a good sign. I think. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, well, last year's conference that Magma run, one of the talks was about imposter syndrome and stuff, and it was, I can't remember who actually gave the talk, but I know he's been around PHP and the industry and the community for quite some time, and it was all relative to anyone. It was you could have been doing it for 10, 20 years, or you could be doing it for a year, 6 months, however long, and you've all still got that same feelings. And it's, I think it's just, as being 4 years in at Magma now and into my career, I still get like that, but not at the level that I used to be, because I was so self-critical. And now it's like, well, I don't know that, but I'm going to figure out why I don't know that, and that's how I'm going to look at it. But yeah, just try not to be too hard on yourself. I think that's the main thing.
So, just to add to what you're saying, like that whole process that you were just talking through of like seeing a challenge and then regarding it as an opportunity to learn. For me, that was a really important realization. I don't know if anyone's familiar with like Carol Dweck's mindset principles of like growth mindset and fixed mindsets, but basically people with a growth mindset come up against a challenge or something that could potentially result in a failure of sorts, or something that might expose them in some way, and they see it as an opportunity to learn and to actually develop or grow as a technologist or something like that. With a fixed mindset, you see it as maybe a sign of weakness, that you're being challenged by this thing. And the tendency, if you adopt the fixed mindset, which it can happen with imposter syndrome, is that you think the best solution is to just muddle through and pretend that you know what you're doing, and then that just perpetuates the cycle of thinking you don't know anything and then not actually learning anything from that process. So yeah, interesting. She's got some TED Talks on it if anyone's interested.
Yeah, I think we'll put a link on the.
Yeah, it's really useful.
And if there's any others.
Well, I think we're going to get the videos, because after every conference each year, this year's going to be our 10th, we post each talk online on YouTube. It's free to access. Type PHP and W. I think last year's are going to go on next month or two, depending on when we get the videos back from the conference centre. But last year's will be uploaded next couple of weeks, couple of months maybe, but the imposter syndrome one will be on there if that's relevant to you. But there's loads of different areas of PHP, and not even just PHP, different types of technologies and different areas, so go check them out. He's made it available to anyone can access it. You can come to the monthly meetings and stuff like that, it's all there, and yeah. What else to do?
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to open it up to the floor now. Does anybody want to ask our panel some questions?
I've got a question.
Go for it.
It's just out of interest. So I came to Sage as an accountant, and why I didn't choose the career that I now do is because I didn't know it existed. And there are things that I think would I have been better suited in other careers. So what was it that you think made you do the first career, and what skills do you think you have that are common to both? And should, I guess, is your career based on your skills rather than the actual job?
Does anyone want to pick that one?
I'll go for it, I guess. Like I said, I did legal work experience when I was 16, and I just kind of adopted a really narrow focus. I think as people have a tendency to do when you're being forced to make kind of decisions about the direction that you want to go in when you are only 16. And yeah, I didn't know, there was at no point in my school was anybody from the technology sector brought in as this is a potential career path for you, but we had lawyers and doctors and teachers and so, you know, when you're not challenged to interrogate like what options are available to you, then you just follow, you know, the path of least resistance, which for me was law. And in terms of transferable skills, I mean, I think in law, I mean, it's hugely analytical, but there's also a kind of creative aspect to it. And probably the same things that attracted me specifically to criminal law over all aspects of law, in terms of like the legal analysis, are the things that I enjoy most about coding. So it's, well, the environment that I work in, it's hugely collaborative. We pair program on everything, so if you're a people person, there's that aspect to it. It's hugely analytical, it's creative, you're solving problems. So the transferable skills are there, but I think regardless of what career you come from, there'll be things that you've experienced that will set you up for a career in software development in ways that you won't even have imagined. So, you know, even if you've been in a client meeting and you've had to argue a point, then that's something that will at some point become relevant. So, I mean, I'm still quite new, I'm only 3 months into the job, but I'm still finding things that from my previous career are adding kind of value to me and what I'm able to contribute in the workplace. So that's from a legal perspective, but I don't know.
And I picked that up from my health background. I wouldn't change my path at all, because I think what I was taught, my first career is basically people and what goes on inside their heads and things like that. And I still use those skills every single day. I just have staff and clients now and not patients. It's still people. So the ability to read a room, establish rapport, actually actively listen and things, you know, those counselling skills and those sort of things that come with that area, they're massively beneficial when you're trying to capture requirements or probe that little bit more, and other people will gloss over it, and I'll go like a badger down to, you know, actually get under the skin of the client. And I guess, you know, been doing it a number of years, and the thing that gets reflected back from clients is you're like a breath of fresh air. Nobody else that we've seen has asked us those questions and all that kind of stuff that you just kind of go, well, is it me? Am I just weird? You know, imposter syndrome, whatever. I am a weirdo, but that's fine. I make it my career now. But it's that whole set of skills that I can identify, but most of those were there in my teenage years, because I was the agony uncle for all my mates and stuff like that. I remember sitting outside Andy's Records in Preston, overhanging the kind of market and stuff, and you know, everybody's telling me their life story. So I was always therapist material, if you will. I just then fell into that career and discovered it. But I class myself as quite fortunate in that I went to a school that was kind of had an award-winning careers program, and so we had an active careers library. We had, you know, 2 hours a week called careers, which you just wouldn't find on curriculum these days. And I discovered occupational therapy as one of the careers I went and studied as one of our little projects. And I held it for a couple of years and did my BTEC and stuff, but I went back to it afterwards because it inspired me in a different way. And so we did things like the psych profiling tests and all those sorts of things at school, aged 14, 15, 16, all of that. So I class myself as very fortunate to have done that. So at that age, I knew an awful lot about myself, and so I wasn't phased when my career options changed and those sort of things. And I've actually decided that, you know, most of the things that we face, like imposter syndrome and all that sort of stuff that dog us all, you know, there's two ways to look at it. You can either make it something that you conquer, overcome, change, adapt to others around you. So what, if I put the Dilbert pointy head boss hat on for a bit and look at Jen and Alan here, one of the nasty tricks I pulled on you two was to give them a student earlier. Was it earlier last year? It's last year. So I said I've been toying with Jen because I tend to play games with Jen like that. Saying, you know, first time we get a student in, you're taking them, and I sort of, oh no, and she thinks I'm joking and all this sort of stuff. And Alan had joined us a couple of weeks before, and a couple of months before, wasn't it? And
yeah, not long.
Not long.
Yeah.
And I said, right, okay. And with two students coming, they're coming for a 2-week placement sort of thing. You guys are taking them. You know, all the imposter syndrome comes through and all that sort of stuff. But because I knew their career backgrounds and I knew they'd not come from a traditional computer science kind of thing, and there's all this imposter syndrome going on and stuff that they've self-confessed to, so it's fine for me to let that out. Students actually force you to realise how much you have learnt and how much you have to take stock. And, you know, the fact that students got a degree almost, they're at that point in their career that they're only kind of going through the motions to get the final paperwork sort of thing. It spurred both of you on, didn't it, in kind of a way where you kind of, the panic kicks in, but oh no, Jeremy won't let us get away with not taking the student. And suddenly then they realise a couple of days in that, yeah, you know way more than the students because you've got experience, and it doesn't matter that you've got a degree or not, you know, because we like it if people come with a degree, but it's not an essential part of joining the company at all. And so it's that spark that people have, and for me, I always find that with people, and that's what I can work with, including in myself. And it's that, what you were saying about the attitude thing, about whether the glass is half full or half empty sort of thing. It's all the cliches you want to find there. It's that thing that decides how you approach your next challenge. And for me, you know, I'm 19, nearly 20 years in doing this sort of stuff, and I'm still as green as the day I started on some things. On other things, I know way more than anybody can. You know, I don't get phased by those things anymore, but I have challenges as a CEO of a company now, and nobody to tell me a manual for that. If you told me the kind of figures and the scale of the figures that I'm dealing with these days and how many noughts are on the end of them and stuff like that, I'd run a mile. And one of my tricks is I chop 3 noughts off the end so I can cope with the numbers, you know, and things like that, just so I don't lay awake at night going, how big's the wage bill now? And this, you know, this sort of thing. So, you know, but if people had told me that day one, you're running the company, I wouldn't have taken it on. But you adapt, and, you know, just by challenging yourself a little bit every day, and the day you stop challenging yourself is probably the day you ought to pivot somewhere else, in my view. I joke with you guys, don't I? Say the day you stop learning is the day you get your P45, and that includes me. You know, especially includes me. It's the boss, I guess. So I don't know if that is a meandering way to answer the original question, but
He tends to talk.
no.
I have a question. It sounds like you all had kind of a different path to get into the jobs that you do now, so like Code Camp and freelancing and internships. So I was just wondering, for those of us that are just getting into it, are there any kind of routes that you would, could you give us some tips, I guess, on ways that are good ways to do it, and then maybe things to avoid? Should we be going back to school? Should we be doing online courses? That kind of stuff.
I think from my own personal experience, and obviously everybody's got there in a sort of slightly different ways. I mean, so yeah, I don't have any formal IT education, but I think because everything is out there and most things are open source, some obviously aren't. I think you can go a long way just absorbing yourself totally with what's out there and learning from just starting. And I'm not really getting it together really, but then finding a route to have some kind of product that you can say is yours. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends, because for me, I didn't really know what I was getting into. I mean, I just thought, well, I'm building sites, so am I going to be a freelance web developer? I didn't really know. I think having a clear idea of what perhaps you want to do would help. I think it would have speeded up my process, because I wasn't really sure. I just, I had a friend who was kind of design developing, and I kind of did that and was just chucking in bits of, really I just needed to think, right, I'm going to concentrate on the kind of software aspect of this. I think just getting involved to the point where you can demonstrate your enthusiasm to somebody, and then just keep talking to people in the community, and somebody's going to take you on in some capacity at some point if you just keep chipping away. That's a pretty vague response, really. What I don't recommend is, I alluded to it earlier, is advertising your services for free, especially on Gumtree, because you'll get the kind of people who will take you for a ride, or try and take you for a ride. If anybody ever says to you, do this for me for free and I guarantee you'll get loads of work, then obviously, they're the people you avoid like the plague. Yeah, so perhaps avoid that one.
I think in a way the answer is in the question. Like, we've all come into this industry through completely different avenues, so find the way that works best for you, and do the research and find the fit. For me, with the job that I had, I couldn't practically dedicate the amount of time that I felt that I needed to get that transition, so that's why I chose a boot camp, because it was immersive and it expedited the process, and I'd already made up my mind that that's where I wanted to go. But we're all kind of evidence for the fact that whichever path you take, if you have the tenacity and the drive and you continue doing it, that there's a way in for anyone, whichever path you choose. And
I think for me, when I did it and transitioned from the health service to from a talking job to a very lonely place, which is me on my own, and you've got to remember, this was back in year 2000, so the internet had only just started to become commercial reality and stuff like that. So we were still on dial-up modems and things like that. Broadband was a thing that was potentially coming and stuff like that. So I really am that old. I remember pre-mobile phones, so there you go. But I did the boot camp thing. I had a great moment from my wife, who she went to work and I stayed at home and learnt the craft. And I spent 3 or 4 months, built an e-commerce system that still has trading on it today. So it's not very big, and I wouldn't show it as my best code ever. You're never going to see that code. However, it taught me all about things. I remember Nirvana moments where I remember a for each loop, and you do key value in a for each loop. I couldn't get my head around it, and there weren't tutorials online about this stuff at the time. Just realise how blessed you all are now to be doing it now. Back then, there weren't tutorials. There were a couple of things in the States and stuff. And I couldn't get my head around it for each. Nobody taught me this sort of stuff. No, so I was trying to do it. And I just thought, sod it, I'll do it, see what it does. And I learnt it, and the light bulb went on. And I still remember it now. And I just went, oh, wow. And then, 3 hours later, I'd got loops going everywhere. And I was away. And it's one of those kind of transitional moments. So for me, plug into people, because learning in isolation is bloody hard work. And so you've got all sorts of resources now. You've got Treehouse, Udemy, Codecademy. You've got code clubs. You've got so much rich environment. So if you want to learn it, there's only yourself stopping yourself doing it these days. Whereas I think if you go back 20 years, you had to be absolutely focused and self-starter in a way, like you can just go to events and say, how'd you do this? Take your laptop everywhere with you. Yeah? And, over a beer or whatever, can you just, I'm not getting this, and just dive in with people and stuff. But then do some structured stuff as well, and you've plenty of choice.
Another thing another thing I'd add, that my experience, I think, as early as possible, is to get away from the one you've got the advantage of everything being out there, but there's so much information out there that the difficulty is picking it apart, what's good, what's bad. And you have the ability to take chunks of code and you can get things, units functionally working and not really knowing the ins and outs of it. And I think
Stack Overflow.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, getting into the habit of making sure you understand as much as you can of what you're, if you are almost lifting something, at least understand the mechanics behind it. Yeah.
I think one of the good things that Jeremy taught me quite early on was, well, I didn't know PHP, I knew a little bit of HTML and CSS, like I said before, thanks to the web. And what he taught me early on was, like, obviously he gave me kind of books to read, online material and stuff, but he set me like code casters and stuff where you would have a problem and it's down to you to then go, actually, well, how would, it's something like you've got 3 bananas and an apple. So a banana each is 22p or something. Add that up. Give me the total of this shopping basket. And he would set me those regularly and he goes, right, okay, right.
I am the evil boss, yeah.
He is. No, but he challenged you and that's a good thing. And you go, the only person that's stopping you is yourself. So you go, actually, right, okay, what do I need to do? And you would say, right, write pseudocode first. Just say what you would do and how you would do it. And then try and then apply like the code to it. So you'd come over and you'd be like, all right, I've done it. He'll come over and he'll get you to explain what you've done and how you've done it. And he goes, well, what have you thought about doing this or doing that? And he would kind of do about 3 or 4 goes of the same problem, and the code would get shorter and shorter and shorter, and it would still have all that functionality in there, but it should be better code, and it was just practice, just learning the structures and stuff, and just practice. Like, there's nothing. You don't have to go to uni. If I could do it all over again, like if I was 18 now, I would do an apprenticeship. And because one of our guys who left last year, he was 16, got an apprenticeship at Magma. 18, was it 17 he was? Got his Zend qualification, one of the youngest in the country, or probably the world, to get this PHP qualification. And he's off, like he's just turned 20 and he's like a mid-level at 20 years old. No debts from university, just I would do that nowadays, but you don't have to go to uni. There's a lot of online stuff, but just challenge yourself and you kind of already know what you want to do. So I wouldn't imagine that there's anything else stopping you from achieving what you want. And just immerse yourself in the events and the groups and stuff, which you are today as well. So you're doing everything right.
Another thing I'd say is learn another language. So whatever your first language that you've taught or learned or picked up or whatever is, learn another one just as a discipline. Go to another group, find them, find the community. How does this work? What do I like about this? What do I not like about my language? Why is that better? Because like if you try and learn spoken language, the fact that if you can speak English, that's one thing, but if then you can learn French or Spanish or German, you can start then to see what the meta layer of language is and what the commonalities are about sentence structure and all those things that actually make up how spoken language is. It's the same in coding, and structures and how things are done and how do you approach dealing with array map reduce as a kind of approach in different languages, and what does that feel like and what are the flavors, because then you step away from this is the language I know, which we get very attached to, and then you suddenly learn it's like that, and another like so I don't have to be as rigid about X, or I don't have to because the problem is in your brain you've got to have a space to hang things, and a mental structure to be able to understand the wider kind of code bases and things that you work on. And if you've not looked at other languages, you almost don't know what you don't know about your own languages. So if you challenge yourself by learning another language, you expand your mental framework of where things can hang, and that way you actually learn and become a more rounded developer in the thing you actually choose. Stay with the same language you started with, fine, no problem, but to never learn another language, you're literally cutting off half of what you're capable of. And you might find that you actually like Java, for example, or something ridiculous like that. Let's not get into that. Code wars, But the point is, it's be informed because you've had a go. So I ran a group for a couple of years, and it was called what was it called? What did I call it? I don't know. It was basically a coding dojo, coder dojo or something like that. Kojo we called it. Yeah, that was it. And basically we learnt TDD using other languages. So we looked at the group, and we had people coming from VB, from .NET world, from PHP world, from Node and all that sort of stuff, all got together. And we all said, look, we want to get out of our comfort zones. And so we learnt Ruby, we did Node.js for a while, we started looking at Python and stuff like that. And we were doing katas in a language that wasn't our day jobs, just to force ourselves to learn. And we did the Rotary, where you have the projector up and then you have people pairing, so one person's driving, the other's navigating, and then every 5 minutes we'd change. And so a room full of 20 people, you'd all drive at some point that night. Now it's a real challenge, it gets you out of your comfort zone, it's scary as hell if you've never done it before, but actually you only need one person in the room who's comfortable with the language, and Google, and Stack Overflow if you must, kind of thing. But you find it out, what's the syntax, how to do X in this language, and you just expand your brain in that way. So for me, go learn another language as well. I very much recommend, even if you're only a few months in. Go pick something else.
Well, no, I'd absolutely agree. I learnt to code using Ruby and JavaScript, and I now work in Scala. So, yeah. I mean, if you can demonstrate that you have the ability and the capacity to pick up languages effectively, and then when you are looking for a job in the workplace, then that makes you like 1,000 times more hireable as a developer.
Brilliant. I'm thinking that I'm going to let everyone off the hook now. I would like you all to join me in thanking our panel. I think they've done an amazing job this evening. Thanks, guys. Unfortunately, there's an awful lot of beer and wine and soft drinks and stuff that need drinking. So if you feel the need to do that, and then maybe you come and sort of socialise and network, and maybe you want to ask these guys a few questions when everybody else isn't looking at you, please do that. Okay?
Bottle of wine for me.
I've been looking at it. I might even have a little bit of